about the faith of Rahab and the faith of how she changed and impacted the nation. So let's set up the scene prior to Rahab being there. The scene is that the people have been saved from Egypt. They've gone from slavery and they are now out into the wilderness. And prior to this, quite a time prior to this, a generation before, they sent 12 people into the Holy Land. And they asked them to explore. And these 12 individuals, they come back, and 10 of them say, guess what? The people there are fierce and ferocious. The armies there are unconquerable. There's no way we can do it. And 2 of them say, let's go. Let's charge. And what the people heard is it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. It's going to be rough. It's going to be a struggle. And even though they had heard the promises that God has given them this land, that they can go ahead and take it, that they can go ahead and have it, they don't trust that because they know it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be an easy thing to do. It's going to be a struggle. So instead of moving forward, they decide just to wander in the wilderness. They decide that instead of living in a land flowing with milk and honey, that they would rather be in the wilderness. Now, I tell you what, doesn't that seem crazy? Except, you know what? I tell you what, when we start thinking about it, have you ever been there? Have you ever lived in a pattern of life where maybe you currently know what it's like to be living in a pattern of life where it just doesn't seem right? You know what could be, but where you're currently at seems to fall so far short of that. You know, we know that 50% of the people in our nation are struggling with some form of addiction. And we know that means 50% of the families are impacted across our nation with individuals that we know that are trapped in the wilderness. They know they can break free into the promised land, but they know that the journey is hard. They know that the journey is difficult. We know in our country that relationships, whether it be marital relationships, whether it be parental relationships, whether it be friendships, we know that we struggle with them. We know that things aren't right, and we know that, man, maybe if I just took a little bit more time, maybe if I had some deeper conversations, maybe if I went through it, but the struggle, it's going to be hard to get there. It means I'm going to have to change the patterns of how I'm living and doing things, and vice versa. Maybe it'd just be easier to live in the wilderness. And so you have this group of people, they're living in the wilderness. They know what they've been promised, they know what they can have, but they're living in the wilderness. And they've grown kind of content and happy with it. And then there's a group of people that's saying, hey, it could be more. It could be so much more. And so they start walking a little bit away. They start moving away from the wilderness and towards the promised land. And they have a couple victories, a couple things that are going on. But still, I love it. I love it. Even though they're getting close and there's good things going on, they're still not ready to charge forward. So Joshua sends a couple spies. To check out some of the strongholds. Did you hear that story? Think about it. The spies go to this town. Do you think, does it sound like the people of Jericho are quaking And they speak to him. This is what they say. The Lord has definitely given this entire land into our power. In addition, all of the land's population is melting down before us. Where do they get this? Where do they get this? You know, I love the story. It says that they send 2 spies in to the land. 2 young men go into the land, and the first place they go, I mean, it says it almost immediately. Where do they go? The prostitute's house. Interesting. Wonder what they had on their mind. But it's interesting that they're found out into this place, and they're at their house. And it's interesting, we know that she's a prostitute. We don't know why. Remember, as I've talked about before, and I'll talk about again, that essentially is that women oftentimes, what was happened is that they would lose their husbands or something would go on in their family dynamics, and essentially is that women could not work. There was no place. And so if all of a sudden you lost your husband and there was no one else to provide for you, one of the few ways that you could make a living, one of the few ways that you could live at all in a world that was 80% impoverished, was to do this. We don't know Rahab's situation. We don't know her story as far as what led her to take this route. What we do know, though, is what she says to these 2 gentlemen, these 2 spies. And let's be honest, she has lived in Jericho. Tribal wars were not uncommon. It's the reason why they built up walls. In fact, we know that she lives into the wall. Excuse me. And we know that she has probably seen people come and attack the wall. She's seen people come and attack the wall and how it seems like it's almost impenetrable. No one can come through. No one can take on this wall. It seems almost, it seems like they don't have anything to fear. But she hears this story about these people that were slaves, who were set free. That there was a God that loved the slaves, that loved the downtrodden, and set them free. For this woman who was this prostitute, for we don't know the reasons, I think something captivated her, something told her that, oh my goodness, there's something true and there's something right about this. There's something about this God that can set the slaves free, that can look at them and not look at them as disgust, but look at them as saying, they are my people. And even though she had seen people come to the walls, even though she had seen people come to the wall, she knew that these people, they were going to be victorious because they had a God that was powerful and mighty, a God that could look at the slaves and say, you will be my people, I will love you and care for you and walk with you. And so when she runs into these slaves, runs into these spies, she not only embraces them, she not only hides them, she not only protects them, she helps them save their lives. And when they go, they hear about this woman, they hear her strength and her faith in this God that can free the slaves. And she testifies to him. And so when they go to Joshua, they go and they sit there and say, wow, let me tell you, we're going to conquer this place. In Christ Jesus, we're more than conquerors. We're more than conquerors. And we live in a world where it's easy to be feeling like we're in the wilderness, like we're trapped. And we can forget about the baptism, we can forget about the communion, we can forget about God's presence and Spirit that is with us, and we can start living in the trapped and in the fear. And here it is, and forget that we have a God that frees the slaves. That we have a God that sits there and says, you know what? I will take this woman. This woman who's probably seen as the low in the low in the town that she lives in Jericho. And I will use her to make a nation stand strong. And believe in my promises. Do you hear her voice echoing from thousands of years ago, saying, I know the wilderness, I know the pain. Know that you have a God that sets people free. Because really, that's what we do when we come together and worship. To worship a God that sets us free. And it doesn't mean the journey is going to be easy and all of a sudden everything's going to fall apart. So everything just goes our way. It means that God, we have a God that will walk with us in the struggle, walk with us in the journey. And not only that, but equips us with the people that will walk with each other. So may we share. Share where we're at, who we are with each other, through our prayers, through our presence, our gift, service, and witness. May we walk boldly, knowing that we live in a world where so many people walk in the wilderness and they just need a voice. Someone who will love them right where they're at. Not look at them from what's going on the outside, but look at what it could be and is in the inside. That's what God did with Rahab. He used this woman to lead a nation. To sit there and say, yes, I tell you what, I want her to be part of my son's family. When I come walking into the world, I want her story to be intertwined, entwined with his. Because I want it to be a story that the people of my son, Jesus Christ, do not forget. That God is a God who breaks down walls. That God is a God who binds us together. That God is a God that says, I don't care where you have been, I don't care what you're going through, but I want to walk with you and I want to lead you unto victory. Will you join me in that walk? Will you pray? Will you join arms together? Will you be part of my army of love here on earth that lays its life down to lift up those around? And so during these next few moments, as we have a time of prayer and a time of offering, I want to encourage you. We all have them. We all have places of wilderness in our lives. Places where we know it should be different, but it's just not. And God doesn't sit there and say, guess what, I want you to feel guilt and shame and bad. God says, I want you, guess what? I want you to walk with me. Lay it down before me. Be vulnerable, connect with others, walk with them in this journey. And so I want you just to take a time, wherever that moment is, and take a time just to lay it before God. Or maybe you know individuals that you know that, guess what, you know that they're struggling. Pray, God, how can I be like Rahab? To be that voice that helps them know that God is with them, that God is present, and that God will bring victory in their life. How can I be that Rahab? So during our time of offering, may it not be just what we're putting on the plates, but may it also be what we're pouring out in our hearts to God. May we take time to be like Rahab and have faith in God that is victorious over our places of wilderness and pain, and can intertwine us with not only God, but with each other. So let us have a moment of prayer and silence, and the ushers can come forward. Let's pray.